Slot Canyon Trip. I like to explore the canyon country of southern Utah at least once a year. This fall has been adventuresome already, and I realize this trip will have to happen soon to avoid winter. I propose destinations, and Dave handles the logistics. He has the resources to make this happen and the organizing skills of an Army officer, which he is. The trip is planned in short order, and Victor will be joining us to make this a leadership retreat for the Brene Brown group. At the last minute, Dave Packer joins and is a good addition. He is a first-rate photographer. We turn out to be a well-matched team, all hiking at about the same speed with no stragglers and no complainers. We meet at Dave's at 8 and pack our personal stuff. He will tow a small utility trailer with most of the gear. We stop at Meadow Hot Springs on the way down and have a delightful conversation with the other people there. We arrive at the Petrified Forest Campground just outside Escelante just before dark and find there is no room at the inn, so we get water and firewood and proceed on to find primitive camping on a side road off the Hole in the Rock road after dark. Dave directs the pitching of his tent in the dark, which has a 17 by 20 floor, so it is spacious. My flashlight batteries die after 3 minutes, a hard way to start a camping trip. Amenities include cots, chairs, a table, and a very welcome wood stove. Victor and Dave Packer keep us well stocked with firewood for the whole trip. We pitch in to make a roast beef Dutch oven dinner complete with beets, carrots, onions, tomatoes. Very tasty. Our breakfast the next day is steel-cut oats with tasty additions. This is our standard breakfast for the trip, and we always come out exactly right because I finish off any leftovers. Victor is generous in sharing his bottle of butter shots, and I get my fair share, finding that a little improves both coffee and hot cereal. In the morning, we stake the tent to secure it, and Dave prepares the daily lunch rations of trail mix, boiled eggs, string cheese, granola bars, and carrots. Then we proceed to the Visitors Center at Escelante. If you visit this place, insist on talking to Shannon. She has a comprehensive knowledge of destinations and conditions, except no other. Based on the time and our current location, we change plans and decide to hike Peekaboo and Spooky Slot Canyons today. They are down a slick rock slope and across a dry gulch. On the trip in, Dave assumes his role as natural-born leader, giving us instructions in tying knots, including how to tie our shoes. Turns out I've been doing it wrong all these years. Who knew? He also gives instruction in keeping a tidy camp and hygiene. A horse bath is feasible at this primitive campsite with no neighbors. I have been here before and realize that it will be helpful to ditch our packs at the entrance to the slot canyons. It seems strange to be with Victor and Dave and to be the one with prior experience and knowledge of the area. What a role reversal. The weather is perfect, clear, cool, and calm, and there are only a few other people in the area. Victor and Dave Packer take an abundance of photos of this highly convoluted, narrow slot. We all take some pictures of a tarantula who seems to be waiting patiently for us before we emerge from the top and look around, and then return to our packs and proceed on to Spooky.
Genesis, you would think that we could already figure out what were the special conditions that caused life to form. You would think, right? There's plenty of time. Look, here's Mark. Mother Earth has a minimum of 700 million years in a much larger laboratory than we've ever put together, and it got it figured out. But you want to claim, Victor, you want to claim God did it.
Spooky is even narrower than Peekaboo if that were possible, and also involves some climbing over or under some big chalk stones. Dave McGrath provides assistance for our party and others. We emerge from the top and return, and then slog through the sand to Brimstone. We cannot get very far here before encountering mud and water, and so we turn around and head back. I had wanted to continue on up Dry Gulch, but we were running out of time, so we agreed to 5 minutes up and 5 minutes back, and get back to the rig after dark. Dinner is chicken thighs and saffron rice, which we greedily devour to complete another long day. On Sunday, we go to Coyote Gulch, which involves a long drive on bad roads. It is afternoon when we start hiking, following cairns across the sand as suggested by Shannon. This leads us to the crack in the wall, our descent into the canyon. The moves to get down look a little sketchy to me. If I had given this more thought in advance, I would have realized that getting in and out of slot canyons can be tricky. More of that later. Our descent takes us past stunning scenery to the creek in the bottom of Coyote Gulch, just before the confluence with the Escelante. I'd wanted to keep my feet dry, but this will not happen. I take my socks off and wade across countless times as we proceed upstream. We see a young couple climbing out just as we climb in, and a young man just before we climb out later, but no other people. We don't see any coyotes, but do see about 8 deer. There are multiple waterfalls, arches, and natural bridges in this scenic canyon. The best is Coyote Gulch Natural Bridge, where we take many pictures. Some of the waterfalls have deep pools, but the water doesn't look inviting for swimming. At Jacob Hamlin Arch, we find our exit route, which is a steep friction pitch with some tricky route finding. The guidebook says it is 5+ and you need a rope, but Dave McGrath says 4. At any rate, I'm glad we went around the loop in the direction we did. I wouldn't want to descend this route. The slope shallows as we ascend, and we climb slick rock following cairns. The cairns are closely spaced and well defined, so they're easy to follow, but they're not leading us in the right direction. So we depart from this route and go cross country as darkness descends. Dave McGrath gives us a lesson in navigation, and we follow his GPS azimuth in the darkness. Dave gives us a lesson in the value of depending on your night vision, which is working fairly well in this relatively flat area of sand with scattered bushes, but Victor finally gives up on the night vision and turns on his headlamp. None too soon, as we immediately encounter a barbed wire fence that would not have seen with night vision. We get back to the rig just after 8 p.m. and back to camp around 10 to prepare a dinner of frijoles al charro, getting to bed around 1. On Monday, we sleep in and start our day back at the visitor center. Today, we will be scouting rather than taking an epic hike. We start at the Box, north of Escelante, a small creek with many crossings that we are able to navigate feet dry, but it does not have strong enough appeal to hold us, and so we move on to find a trailhead for the Escelante River in town, which is not easy. Turn north at the cemetery parking and continue north and watch for an arrow pointing to the left. The highway river crossing is more accessible, and we follow it downstream until we would have to wade. On this route, we see an Indian grain storage structure up in a recess in a cliff. Our next stop is Upper Calf Creek Falls. This is a more strenuous hike than the lower falls, but is less crowded and has opportunities for swimming. And Victor takes a dive off a cliff into the plunge pool of the uppermost falls, an impressive feat I am not eager to follow. This is an amazing place with deep water that is crystal clear. After the steep hike out, we continue to Boulder and take the Burr Trail Road east from there. This is to access the trailhead for the gulch, which I put in quotes to distinguish it from everything else around here, which is also a gulch of some sort or another. We intended to hike this, but the drive is an adventure in its own right, and we continue down the road to a canyon that seems like driving down a slot canyon on a paved road, no less. This leads us to a steep set of switchbacks on gravel that take us to Capitol Reef National Park. My first visit here, on the ground that is, I've flown over it many times. We drive this same route in reverse as the sun sets and continue into Escelante for a brief stop. The bush outside our tent is well irrigated during our stay, and there are flush toilets in Escelante. We have beans again for dinner, better the second day. This is our earliest evening for turning in and earliest start the following morning to break camp faster than a NASCAR pit stop, about 80 minutes, and head home. The weather has been perfect so far, but we skip the hot spring stop on the way home since we're driving through a blizzard and get back to Idaho Falls around 6. This has been a grand adventure, hopefully the first of many in this area. There's so many amazing things to see and do here. As part of our Brene Brown leadership, we repeatedly bring up the subject of community building, but do not arrive at a conclusion. When we get home, I realize that is what we have been doing all weekend.